Hello and welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 60, a podcast where we just discuss the books, genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm ARD Clerk.
Paulina Woods.
Electric Ada's.
And Shabella's waving. Today we have Demelza Carlton all the way from Western Australia. Can you say hi?
Good morning, though I understand it's not morning anywhere else.
Nope. No, we're all it's wine time for me. So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, that's fun. I am a USA Today bestselling author of over 40 books across various genres, romance, fantasy, science fiction, psychological thrillers, romantic comedy. I think the only thing I haven't written is horror and stuff for children. I'm not qualified on either of those. I was born in Western Australia. I've lived here most of my life, but I've done a lot of travelling. I spent a quarter of last year travelling through Europe researching my romance and medieval fairy tale series and a few other projects that I'm not supposed to talk about. But yeah, a glass of wine and it's amazing what you get out of me. What do you want to know?
Well, first of all, do you have a glass of wine at 8 o'clock in the morning?
No, I have caffeine on the desk at the moment. It is not coffee and it's cold, but because it's too hot here to be drinking coffee this time of the morning.
What are you drinking? Is it soda pop?
Pepsi Max.
Pepsi Max. I don't even know what that is. Do we have Pepsi Max in the US? Oh, they're all nodding. I don't drink soda pop.
It's the equivalent of Coke Zero from the Pepsi brand, and it tastes better, in my opinion. But while I was in Europe, I would have put up with just about anything.
Okay, so you said that you write almost any genre, but the part I'm interested in, because this is personal preference, is the medieval fairy tales. How did you get into doing retellings?
I've always wanted to write historical romance because it's so much fun, but there's so much research involved. One of my friends was doing an anthology project, May Sage, and she said, "Can you write a twisted fairy tale where the villain wins?" And I said, "Nah, I don't write that. I was writing contemporary romance at the time." Anyway, 2 weeks later, I said, "I've got 4 ideas. Which one do you want?" Because that's just the way my mind works. And she's looking at all of them going, "I don't know, just pick one and publish the rest for yourself." And I'm like, "Nah, I can't do that." But of course I did, and then wrote the other 3 and then struggled to write the 4th on the deadline for her anthology, which came out in June and I think is since gone anyway. Yeah, I wrote the first 3 and it was so much fun. I decided to write an entire series just because I had so many ideas and I had this trip to Europe planned anyway. And we had all of these castles on the list that just fitted with the right time periods. I thought, why not? And they sold really well. I was surprised at how popular they were. I wasn't the only one who liked them.
How did you? Yeah, well, yeah, it's a huge genre, the fairy tale retelling, which surprisingly doesn't necessarily qualify as romance. The fairy tales don't qualify as romance. But I tend to gravitate towards the fairy tales that have the happily ever after, so Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, Cinderella. But after doing some research of my own, I realized, yeah, there's some fairy tales that don't have anything to do with a romantic relationship. But,
oh, hell yes, like Three Little Pigs. I mean, when people heard I was writing that as a romance, they all said, "You can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it." And, well, I was in Poland at the time and we were drinking some moonshine that they were watering down with vodka. And I said, "Yeah, sure I can." And by morning I had a concept, but it was a bit crazy, so I didn't tell anyone until I started writing it in Scotland.
Yeah, I can see how that would be conceived as a little crazy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The fun bit was when we were in Scotland, I was with my husband and one of his friends, and we were all doing the distillery tours. So going from one whiskey distillery to the next, I was the driver, so I wasn't drinking much of the whiskey. And the boys were singing in the back seat, and all of a sudden they screamed out, "Castle, castle!" And I'm sitting there going, "I've seen a lot of castles. I know there are no castles on this island, because if there were, I would have had them on the list of places to visit." Anyway, they insisted there was a castle, so we went back to the sign, and they said there was. So we drove over this ridge, and in the middle is this huge lake with an island and the ruins of a castle on it. And the boys going, see, you didn't believe me. Anyway, we went out there, and it turned out this castle was built just at the right time for my series. And it was, yeah, all of the pictures, and there's a whole museum there and everything. It was built roughly the 12th century when the Vikings owned these islands. And the Vikings only had a king there because he married one of the local Scottish girls. I'm sitting there going, okay, well, we've got a romance. And there was a lot of pictures and a lot of information about how the original houses were built. And some of them were stone, some of them were straw thatch. And the original Viking cottages were all built of branches. So we've got our wood. So I had my 3 little pigs' houses with the castle and the other things. I had a romance. I just had to get it straight in my head. And, well, being Vikings, it got a lot more violent, so more like Outlander than Disney Cinderella, for example. But it worked. That one's Blow. I released it in November.
That sounds pretty amazing.
The trip was, and the book was even more fun because I got to go through all my pictures and everything of what I've done.
So that kind of leads me into my next question: is how do you put your own fresh spin on a fairy tale? Because they have been retold and retold and retold, and there's almost like Beauty and the Beast has versions that are Greek, French, and almost any other continent has their own version. So how do you put your own spin on it?
Well, that's the best part. Most of them were written in the time period that they were told. So say the Greek version, ancient Greek version, we'd be going back to 2,500 years for Beauty and the Beast, whereas the Disney version is set more Victorian times or 18th century. So sit there going, it just depends on what time period you want to set it. A lot of people set a modern, and I had written so much contemporary, I just looked for a period of history where the events matched. And for Beauty and the Beast, there was a particular part in Swedish and Polish and German history where this merchant league got set up, and they were fighting off pirates, and it worked really well with the concept I had for Beauty and the Beast. And look back, and it was roughly middle of the 12th century. And likewise with Cinderella, foot binding, so the deal with the really small feet versus the really big feet fitting into the shoes, was roughly mid-12th century. So I took one look at those and said, okay, that's an amazing part of history. There was a lot of new technology, a lot of new stuff coming in. It was the time of the Crusades. And not many people write that period because, well, I've been told it doesn't sell, which is bullshit. So I wrote it, and I was just amazed at, people don't know the medieval stuff. They don't have the history right, but that's okay. I've got it, and it's all in the book, and it's all put together into a story with the fairy tale they know. So there's my spin, taking a more modern idea because the girls all have agency. Sleeping Beauty wakes up when the prince slices through her plants because she's not particularly pleased about her garden being mutilated. So by the time he actually gets to touch her, it's with her permission or not a hope in hell. So it's just different because the girls all have agency under a more modern viewpoint, but back in those times.
Right, back in those times, they wouldn't have been able to say one way or the other. So I really like that your female characters have agency over themselves. So are you allowed to talk about your next fairy tale project?
Well, there's nobody who's going to beat me over the head and gag me if I try. But I can't tell you how much I'm allowed to reveal about it because it isn't finished yet. And the characters might have other ideas of where they want to take the plot.
Oh, isn't that always the case?
Yes.
Amy?
Okay. So, Demelza, are you a full-time author?
Yes, I am. I have been for a couple of years now.
And so what's your daily routine like for anybody out there who might be interested in how you go about writing your books?
It's fun because I always was going to say, yep, I get up straight away and write, but actually I don't. I get up straight away and deal with admin because I'm in Australia, and that's my only chance to get a hold of anyone in the US before they go off and watch, I don't know, whatever's on TV this week, put their kids to bed and stuff. So I'm up at 5 or 6 in the morning my time because that's 5 or 6 in New York. So I can roughly catch the end of the workday to deal with emails and whatever else. Then I usually have to get kids off to school and make sure my husband actually goes to work because his alarm clock apparently doesn't work. And then I get to write from about 9 in the morning through to school pickup in 3 in the afternoon. So, yeah, I only actually have a 6-hour workday because I have kids.
Understandable. I have kids too, and they do sometimes interfere with your plans. So talk to us a little bit about your dream project. If there was one thing that you haven't written that you really, really want to write or put out there, maybe you're holding back for a political reason, a religious reason, don't want to stir the pot reason. Is there something that you've been dying to write but you haven't written?
It'll be one of the fairy tales, and the reason I haven't written it is because I've set it later in the series and it's scheduled for this year. No, I don't. I was researching how to nuke cities during the most recent US presidential election. I don't tend to hold off.
So no fear there.
No, well, I don't know. Nuking cities, I discovered, is actually a lot easier than you'd expect. But aside from that, sorry, I have a physics background, so it's kind of scary to go, yep, I understand the mechanics. And, oh, yeah, I didn't want to know it was that easy.
So tell us about, you told us that your female characters always have agency over themselves, but I want to hear about your heroes. What is the perfect book boyfriend in your opinion?
He would have to be flawed, and he would not have to be in charge all of the time, but he's certainly allowed to be as heroic as he likes. It's really hard. I would say my favorite characters are usually the ones who end up saving each other if it's a pair more than anything else. I love it. Of my characters, it's kind of embarrassing going, I love all the fairy tale heroes because they're under the medieval knightly gallantry sort of stuff. It's awesome how they can, just come in and save the day. But a lot of my women have magical talents or political acumen or contacts, and they get things done in ways that the guys just can't. But say in my modern day ones, my contemporary romances, for example, the rock star hero is not an alpha, and he's got a reputation as one, but he's actually really uncertain and insecure under the surface. And while, in the media spotlight and in the bedroom, he can take charge. In anything else, he actually prefers to be told what to do because he knows he's going to screw things up. So sit there going, he's really hard to work with just because I know that I'll sit there and I'll set up everything absolutely perfectly for happily ever after. And he'll just say one line and the heroine throws her drinks in his face and stalks off. And I'm sitting there going, well, he deserved it. But now what?
So that leads me into my next question, as a matter of fact. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you know where your characters are going, or do they tend to take you off the beaten path when you're least expecting it?
Yeah, I love it. It's both in this case. I have always had a vague plot when I started out. Now I actually write a plot. And then my characters just laugh at me and take off with it and shred it or, light a fire with it because they're good at that. I have both. I have a plot and they have to meet these plot points, and the majority of them will still be in there by the end. Blow, my Three Little Pigs story, was the perfect example. I had it all set. This is what's going to happen. And then I ended up with a couple more characters who were not meant to be there at all. They were not meant to be named. They were not meant to exist. And they're actually going to get their own book, which will be my end of January release, Hansel and Gretel retold. They're not meant to exist, but they do. And they have their complete own story, which was not what I expected. So, yeah, all my characters, don't think much of plot.
Paulina?
Sorry about that. So I'm gonna veer away from the books. So you were talking, you sound so traveled. I'm like, yay, I went to like mid-US. I'm like scared to cross the border to Mexico, but that's another story. So what do you do for fun other than travel? Really fun? Like, do you like mountain climbing? Base jumping.
I would kill to go base jumping.
Right?
I used to love skydiving. It's such a rush, but it's dangerous, and I have kids now, so I'm not allowed. I I like diving and snorkeling, despite being afraid of certain fish. I have been known to chase sharks around the reefs so that I can get a photo. My daughter insisted, therefore I had to get a photo. Look, I live in a really lovely part of the world where you can go to the ocean in about 15 minutes drive on a bad day. On a good day, it's only 10, and head out in a boat whale watching or snorkeling or to the beach. And the weather today, I don't know, I'm in Celsius, not Fahrenheit, but I'd say it's about 25 degrees now Celsius. Sit there. I wouldn't know what that is in Fahrenheit. Beautiful temperature anyway. And it's 8:30 in the morning. So if I wanted to go to the beach for a swim today, and snorkel, totally, I could be there in half an hour and in the water. So, and yeah, I usually take a camera with me. So what do I do for fun? I go places and usually chase the wildlife around with a camera.
So where's the most exotic place you've been?
That's really hard to say. I've been to the Cocos Keeling Islands and Christmas Island, which are really remote islands in the Indian Ocean. You know where the Maldives is? Have you heard of the Maldives? Think tropical paradise, beach huts, snorkeling off your hut. Well, Cocos is like that, except without the tourists.
I'm gonna have to go look it up now because I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, seriously, you see the pictures, you go, oh my. Yeah, it's really hard to get to and quite expensive, but I went there for my master's degree a few years ago. So, awesome. I've been through a lot of Europe last year, from Scotland to Poland, south to Italy. Spent a couple of weeks in the south of France researching all sorts of stuff, including medieval castles. Hey, I live in Australia. We have a lot of reefs up and down the coast. So, and because Western Australia has some really gorgeous ones, I'd say Coral Bay, Ningaloo, and Broome, which are not going to mean anything to anyone who hasn't been here because they're not the well-known tourist attractions. Have you ever heard of South Sea pearls?
You know what? If I talk to my boss, she probably would tell me, but no.
South Sea pearls are like the most expensive pearls in the world, and they're grown all over the world now, but they were found in one place 100 years ago, and that one place is Broome, a town in the northern part of my state. And the entire pearl industry came from this one tiny little town and a couple of beaches.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I spent 2 weeks there researching my contemporary romance series, Where the Rock Star's From, because there was an island resort up there. And I went everywhere from camping to the 5-star resorts, out to the pearl farms, the works, because, yeah, it was awesome. And going, yeah, nobody's ever heard of it. So
I love camping, though.
So did I. Oh, wow. Yeah, the desert's not far from there.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think of where it's located, and if it's like my desert that I grew up in, probably. We're probably the same distance from the equator.
Yeah, going Broome is, you drive 5 k's inland and everything is rust-coloured dirt, Pindan dust, all the way to the border, which is about 1,000 kilometres inland.
Yeah, but I love the desert. It's so beautiful.
Yes, and stargazing at night at the desert. Oh, it's awesome too.
Right? No one understands. Like, I tell people I live in San Diego now, and I'm just like, but they're beautiful stars. Like, no, when you can see the stars moving, that's beautiful.
Yes.
Like, you look up and it's just like twinkling, and it's so clear, and I love going home for that. Just the view alone. Now I'll think. I'm like,
yeah, you got me drooling now.
It's nice. So have you been, I know you've been a lot of places. Have you ever been on this, like, have you been to the US?
No, I haven't been to the US, Canada, or South America. It's on the list, but I think my husband wants to ski Japan again first.
So let's say my brother got married in Japan, evil man. So if you had to pick those 3 places, where would your first place be to go?
I'm going to offend someone. Canada.
No, you're not. I want to go to Canada. I want to see a tundra, and I can't go to Russia, so I guess Canada's next.
Whereas I was really close to the Ukraine border only a few months ago, so Russia would actually be easier.
Yeah. I want to see their dogs. They're huge dogs. But then they're always at prison camps, but I don't think I want to go to prison to see one. So I'm like, just show me a picture again. Thank you. They're like, they say they're almost as big as a small colt. Okay. That's like really weird that I'm excited about that, but yeah. But they're meant to like live on the tundra. So it's kind of cool. So what part of like Canada do you want to see?
My daughter actually wants to see Niagara Falls, the top of it when it's frozen.
Right? Okay. Let's just travel. Let's just
yep.
Let's all just go. We're done.
Well, my daughter comes traveling with me on most of my research trips.
I would want to do Niagara Falls when it's frozen, just because if I slip and fall or something, I won't drown. I'll break some bones, but I'll be okay. Me and my swimming don't work well together.
I used to coach it, so I wouldn't be worried about that so much.
I grew up in the desert, where it was like we had to go to the the town pool. Our town was small, and there was no way I was swimming in a town pool with little kids who peed on themselves. So I didn't try to learn to swim until I was like almost 19. So yeah, I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll just stick my feet in the water when I need to. Maybe. That's all the questions for me.
Oh,
Electra, you ready?
Does Zish have any? I guess not.
Looks like she's conversing with someone else, so let's give her a minute and then
okay,
we'll come back to her.
That's fine. Actually, yeah, I do have a couple. You have a lot of different series and in different genres that you write in. How do you possibly keep track of everything? Characters, kind of like the world building in your fairy tales, and just events and things along those lines.
It depends on the series, to be honest. Some of them, like for the fairy tales or for the Hell series, I have so many different characters that are all over the place. I end up keeping spreadsheets of this is this person, this is what they've done, and everything's all there like some kind of Gantt chart. I come from a physics, maths, risks management background, so spreadsheets are a thing. I get most people don't think that way. But yeah, it's all in there. So if I need to go back there, I'll be able to go, okay, yep, so-and-so's got this and this. I've got, I think, 30 pages of notes for the fairy tales on this. This book has this characters and their names mean this, and this is the place it is, and this is why. Here's an excerpt on the history, and this is why. And then I'll have a whole folder full of links on the history and stuff. So, and in the case of a lot of my contemporary work or anything before the fairy tales, then I have a folder of photos that says, okay, this is where this island is. This is what this looks like. And I'm not talking maps. I'm talking aerial photos I took out of a charter plane window. So for the fairy tales, I do have some photos like for Scotland or Poland or the unicorns or the dragons and stuff in Poland. All of that I have, some of the Viking stuff as well. That's all research photos, and that'll be for a folder for that book. So if I want to know what, that guy's ship looks like, I'll be able to go back in and go, oh, yeah, that's what that Viking ship looks like. And yeah, so I'll have it all in there in a folder, but there's too much to keep in my head anymore. There's too many books and too many characters who want my attention.
Yeah. That I know. So we're talking about like pictures and so forth. Is there any famous actors or musicians that you kind of, any of your characters kind of resemble?
No, actually, if there's anything that they resemble, it'll be the stock photos on the cover, and it'll be the model for the photo, just because I usually get the covers done before I write the books.
That is my favorite. That's my absolute favorite, when the cover, the heroine or the hero, I mean, they match what it is in the book. That's my favorite. I've actually had read a couple where it was just like, the cover has a blonde, but she has black hair. Explain that one to me, please.
I've got one of those as well, and I tried, but I just couldn't get a shot with the right male model, and I just thought, no, setting up one shoot for one photo, stuff it. I don't care. She is allowed to dye her hair blonde. She never actually says what colour it is. Just the fact that she's from Singapore going, it probably isn't blonde, but you know what? She's capable of buying a $10 pack of hair dye.
Are we all? Yes. Is in your romance series, is your hero and heroine, are they two protagonists, or is one a protagonist and one an antagonist?
I'm trying to think. I don't usually have the guy as an antagonist. The exception, of course, is the Hell series, where the guy is Lucifer, and he's an antagonist when he's asleep doing nothing, because that's just who he is. And most of the time they tend to be co-protagonists, because they both have agency, they both have their own character arc, and they're both after a little more than just love, and they have their own flaws that they need to see through the story. Lucifer is flawed from beginning to end, likes causing trouble. I mean, he saved the world with a sex tape in one of them.
Oh, well,
that's a spoiler. I won't tell you which one.
awesome. All right. And how much time do you, because I know you're a full-time writer, but I think sometimes readers, and I know even myself, I get a little frustrated with my favorite authors, like, how come you're not publishing fast enough? How much time do you spend in research where, you know what I mean, like, kind of explains to readers as to why, maybe you don't publish as fast as some, or how you're able to maybe publish a little bit faster? Is it your research or anything along those lines?
I used to work in environmental consulting, and you'd have to be able to fit in a lot of research in the space of a couple of weeks and write the report, which was about 50,000 words in a fortnight, so 2 weeks. Luckily, my stories I get to spend a bit more time on than 2 weeks, including the research. I would say it depends on the book, but at the moment, my fairy tales take me roughly 3 weeks to write, including the research, because I'll have the background before I plot it, and then anything I need, like for the Elves and the Shoemaker, so it's hard to say. That one's kind of out, it kind of isn't. I've written it as a novella. I will extend it to a full-length novel later in the year, but so I can discuss it because the novella's out. I had to learn medieval shoemaking in the space of about 3 days. And that was fun, because it was everything from, basically the dead beastie and which dead beastie it actually was, because I didn't realize they had all kinds of different leather back then, right through to the shoes and what a princess's shoes would be versus what, a farmer's shoes would be. So, yeah, 3 days of medieval leatherworking in Poland. My goodness.
That sounds boring, but
it was more of an eye-opener, because it was 3 days immersion, and it was important to my characters because it was Elves and the Shoemaker. I had to know how she made these shoes for this guy.
To be honest with you, I probably would have just tried to bullshit my way through it.
As some people do. In my case, it's no, that was her thing. That was all she wanted to do in life, was work in her dad's shoe shop and run it. And then her brothers sold it and frittered away the money, so she was kind of homeless and couldn't do her passion. And she ends up stuck as an elf under a curse in this shoe shop again. And she's going, "Oh, he's got shoes and he's got nothing he can do with them. I can do it." So yeah, Elves and the Shoemaker is like, this is her dream job. And she's just cursed with it. So in her case, it had to be that. He's just going, "Yep, I'll make this, I'll make this, I'll make this. It's done." For her, it was a passion. So I had to have that level of detail.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure there's someone who'll tell me I've got it wrong.
Well, you know what they say
There's
about
always
opinions. It is true. I did notice on your website, just for any of our readers, tell us a little bit about your 9 free books that you offer. What do they do? Do we sign up for your newsletter? Is that how
it basically does sign you up for my newsletter, yes, because you'll get 9 free books over, I think it's about 5 or 6 emails. I'm sorry, I've lost count. Sometimes I split up the books, so it varies. But yeah, you basically get each of the series starters. It'll be an explanation of where this is and a bit of background that you won't get any other way. Just go, yep, this is this series. This is the first free book or first 4 free books, depending on the series. And if you like it, download it and you'll get information on the rest. So when I say you get 9 free books, which is a lie, you actually get 10 at the moment. I'll have to fix that. Yes, sorry, you actually get one of the fairy tales free as well. And if I'm in a good mood, you get a second fairy tale free. But I didn't tell you that. Oh, but I did. Okay. It just depends what mood I'm in the morning as to whether you get the extra one or not, because you go into a particular sequence. That's either the 10 or the 11, that's all. So
Great.
yes, you get a whole bunch of free books from me that'll introduce you to everything, and you don't have to grab them all if you don't want them. But if you do, that's awesome, and I hope you enjoy them.
Awesome. Actually, I was actually going to check that out. Who doesn't love free books? I'm done. Does anybody else have anything? Ish, what about you?
Ish, we're going to ask a question.
Why fairy tales? Has it been a infatuation since childhood? Or is this something you just kind of said, hey, one day I like fairy tales?
Both. I grew up with the dark ones, the ones where the Little Mermaid dies horribly, where Sleeping Beauty where Sleeping Beauty is a victim, and the bad guy in that particular story is actually Prince Charming's wife. So I'm going. So
Yeah.
the ones I grew up with are Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, just sit there going, look, the Disney version's really nice with the stolen kiss. At least he didn't.
It's much nicer.
Yeah. Yes. I don't look. There are some things that I'll say on a podcast, but I'm sorry, Sleeping Beauty is a horror story.
Yeah.
Even mine, I just couldn't write that. So yes, I've loved them since I was a kid. Arabian Nights more than Grimm's fairy tales as well, because those ones, the cliffhangers and the happily ever afters seem to be a lot more of them in there just because of the nature of those tales. I've always wanted to write a retelling, but I never thought that they would sell or there'd be a market for them. And I gave in last year and discovered that people actually do like fairy tales as much as I do, which is awesome because I get to write more.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you tend to write eras that aren't very popular. You said that was bullshit, which I agree with that on a lot of things. It is bullshit. But why did you choose to do that even though you were told it probably wouldn't work?
Well, it's funny. Some people said it wouldn't work. My experience with historical fiction said that it didn't work. But also I had seen some other authors who were doing really well with fairy tales. And I thought, well, if they can do really well with fairy tales, I'll give it a try. I've done that with most books. I want to write it. We'll see how it goes and it'll be fun. So I think I allocated about 2 months to writing 3 fairy tales. So I really concentrated on those 3 to get the first 3 out. That would have been Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty at the time. They all have different names, of course. But yeah, those were the three basics that I worked on. So that was, this time last year, I had just released my Enchant, my Beauty and the Beast tale, and I had written Awaken, the Sleeping Beauty one, and Dance, my Cinderella tale, was partially written for release in mid-February. So it was a let's experiment because, hey, that's my background and we'll see how this goes. I have a little bit of free time. I was going to start a new project that was completely different, but we'll see how it goes. And it went better than expected.
Okay, forgive me for not scrounging your site. I just moved from Missouri to Florida, so everything is still scattered. I haven't had much time to be online.
I'll forgive anybody for not stalking me, but if they stalk me, that's, totally up to them.
But I plan to stalk you later if that makes you feel better. But
okay.
Which one of your books would you say is a fan favorite?
Dance, Cinderella Retold.
Do you think that has to do with possibly Cinderella being one of the most popular fairy tales?
It could be. It could also be because my Cinderella carries a sword and kicks Prince Charming's ass in the army.
Well, that totally works for me. So, yeah.
When they dance at the ball together, it's because she's technically his wingman.
Oh, my. All right.
And And they're both bored, so they actually go out into the courtyard to practice some sword play, and she accidentally leaves her shoes behind because they took them off to play.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's on my to-be-read list now with like 10 million others. But... all right. Well, that's all I have.
Okay, we'll see if we can do this without an interruption from my child. My youngest decided he doesn't want to stay in bed. He's been out of bed twice already. Okay, so as has become a Focus on Fantasy Romance tradition, we do have a giveaway that Demelza has agreed to. One of her medieval fairy tale ebooks. Excuse me. I have completed drinking my wine, FYI. And I get really, really giggly, and sometimes I talk and it doesn't make any sense. But we're doing an ebook giveaway, as is our tradition. We'll leave it open for 30 days. So let's see, February 13 will be the last day. To enter this giveaway, all you have to do is visit our blog for episode 60, which will be at focusonfantasyromance.wordpress.com, and ask Demelza a question. Anything that we haven't covered in the podcast, ask her. You'll get a reply, and you'll get an entry in to win a free ebook. And if you go to our website, you can get apparently 9 or 10 ebooks. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Oh, that'll be easy. www.demelzacarlton.com. So if you've got the spelling of my name right, DEMELZACARLTON. And you know, the www and .com are probably the easy bits. And yeah, it's just on the front page of my website. So you'll click on the You Want 9 Free Books, and it'll take you through, sign you up for, well, all 9 or 10 or 11, depending on which one you clicked on. And you're good to go for the next couple months.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. Listeners, if you
so
like...
much for inviting me.
Oh, well, you're welcome back anytime. Anytime you have a new release you want to talk about, or if you just want to talk about traveling or history or anything like that, you are more than welcome. Listeners, if you like the podcast, please comment, like, and share. This has been episode number 60.